welcome to today's episode of the Game of Content. This is the very first episode we're recording today. I just want to give a shout out to my buddy Pijinnn, hailing all the way from Scotland today. Pijinnn, how's your day going so far?
So far, so good.
So today's episode of the Game of Content, we're focusing on playing the Twitter game and managing cancel culture. And these two things can be a hot topic because there is a game to social media. It's a big introduction to Pijinnn. Give us a little bit about what you're about.
Sure. Well, my name's Pijinnn. I'm from Glasgow, Scotland. I am a Destiny 2 content creator. I say Destiny 2. I could say Destiny the game, the franchise, I guess. I provide entertainment for the franchise, provides sort of community building for it. And recently I've kind of started dipping into the sort of knowledge side of it, giving out know-hows and suggestions and curating lists and whatnot for people to check out. So yeah, knowledge, entertainment, at the core of all is bringing people together to play the game.
Since this show is about content creators, I'd love to get your feedback on what you define as a content creator.
Well, there's quite a few alleys for content creation. Originally, for myself, I wasn't really a content creator. I'm more a commentator, where I sort of, microblogged on Twitter, thoughts and opinions on state of the game. So I think a part of being a content creator is kind of being an influencer for the game, having like strong opinions on it that could guide the game to be better versions of themselves. Go from there to providing tips, hints, guides. I think for me, entertainment as well. At its core, entertainment for people, something that people can tune into, be inspired to either do the same thing, that can be play the game, or even make their own content, which goes around the loop there.
It is entertainment first and foremost. It's really interesting as someone that has a broadcasting degree, but that's 10 years ago, and how much streaming and content creation has evolved over that 10 years. So let's dive right into the topic. We're going to talk Twitter. So give me 3 buzzwords that you use to describe your personality on Twitter.
3 buzzwords? Well, there's actually one that's only happened recently. I can't really think of a word for it, but it's to do with not projecting yourself, but it's like projection of your thoughts, but not you as a person.
You're not identifying personally with what you're putting out there. It's an opinion, but it's not who you are.
Sort of thought projection, then I'll go with thought projection. That's something that I've used a lot recently. Thought projection, I'll go with being genuine. Proper exchanges, and I'll say reinforcement is another buzzword. Reinforcement and genuine and thought projection. There you go. That's a couple of double barrels in there, but
your presence has always been very consistent. You're never up and down. It's very clear if someone's on your Twitter page, they can get a really good idea about what your priorities are and who you are as a person. And I think that's really important about consistency in who you are. Can you give me a quick breakdown of your growth on Twitter?
Like for me on Twitter, I started out using it as a very personal account. It was my place to go to just tweet out thoughts, which I've got plenty of. I'm pretty sure I'd amassed a good few thousand tweets before I actually started using it for Destiny discussion. At the time, I was unable to stream, and I took to Twitter to just start as I said, commentating. I think at the time I followed maybe a handful of Destiny streamers and notable gamers, some of the bigger names like Plaid, Datto, people who were really big in the scene. But for me, I just kind of went out and I just started following people. Like not even mass following, there would be like a handful of people that I'd find across pages talking about Destiny. And actually the first protocol I did was follow people with like Destiny sort of avatars on their Twitter pages. Luckily enough for me, some followed me back, some came to check me out.
So you showed a big part of your personality in being vulnerable with those thoughts and those tweets. You weren't just like, check me out, I'm streaming.
Yeah, that was it. I wasn't even streaming at the time, and due to like technical issues, and I took straight to Twitter, started talking about the game. I was on console at the time. I would just upload photos and say things from Destiny, clips, funny clips, skill-based clips and stuff, although that's not really my vibe, I'm afraid. And I just got the conversation going, and over a few months I'd started getting lots and lots of influxes of followers, and a lot of them were streamers and people who were a bit more rooted in the Destiny community. Because I kept on talking, and this is where reinforcement came in. I was constantly reinforcing my conversations with people. They would hit me up with a few replies, and then I would see them on their timeline. It wouldn't just be anytime they replied to me. I would reply to them, have the conversation, put out my thought, and it just kind of steamrolled, if I was being honest. I started getting a few very notable people follow me back. You just build a presence that people kind of they'll go, I've seen that guy about, I've seen that person talking, they've come up in my feed before. And before you know it, people, they become very curious to who you are. And I think I was able to shine with, again, you'll go on my timeline, you'll just see it's a constant like discussion. There's an ongoing sort of, there's a narrative to, not even on purpose, it just came, to me, it came quite naturally. I just had a constant narrative. And I think people started to notice that, started to follow it. Eventually, I did start talking about that I wanted to stream Destiny and cover it. By the time I was able to break through the technical limitations I had at the time, I had a whole mass of following who we were pals, basically. We were good friends. That was something that kind of I'd never done before until I started approaching like people from the Destiny community or gaming in general. As I said, I'd been more inclined to like post dinner photos like a year beforehand, whereas this time I'm posting all the Destiny stuff. I just went in completely unhinged. What wasn't a short journey, I'll tell you. But that was like the first 8 months, and I managed to generate so much traffic just through reinforcement and then being genuine, having these people become friends, getting some games together eventually, and that was another thing as well. I was bold as brass as well. I should probably add that.
Bold as brass.
Yeah, I have a brass neck, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I just started asking people if they wanted the game, do stuff together, and before I know it, I expanded my friends list on PSN at the time, and it just went from there.
You just have to take the dive. You just have to, because the worst thing someone can do is say no. That's it. And it's so intimidating to look at someone you idolize and you're like, hey, I would love to play with this person. But if you don't realize that you've put them on a pedestal and you're too scared to even connect with them, you're dehumanizing them, you know? So the fact that you just reached out to people and you're like, hey, I've seen you on my Twitter timeline. I've been following you for a while. Let's hang out.
That was honestly it. It becomes an experience like with these people together. Like I've got so many fond memories already. I remember I had this sort of crew that I rolled with. We would do a really late night stint in the sort of player versus player modes.
Oh, that's so fun. Custom matches?
Not even custom matches. We literally were going as it was only 6 of us, but we had this little movement where we're like, right, it's time to get this crew together and we'd meet up. And that was just like one group of so many different unique people. But then everyone else that's on the outside of the timeline sees that we're doing that, and you kind of draw them in. You're like, yeah, oh yeah. They're like, oh. They'll say, oh, can I come play with you next time? And before you know it, they fill some gaps and people come to join in and you make the real experiences together as well. So yeah, the short answer is yes. Like I brass necked a lot of people to game with over the times, and eventually that's just led to real friendships for a lot of people.
That's my favorite part about this is all the friendships that you would have no idea you would be making when you get started. So it's just this wonderful ripple that people just, you can't consider it. If you're looking at this career from the outside in, there's so many intricate nuances to your network that I have never experienced before. It's crazy.
From that, the one big thing that I always say, if you're making these connections, social media and then on gaming, is to try and you can't force it obviously, but if it happens, a defining moment for you and any individual or any group of people, like if you can come across a defining moment, I think that sets in stone like the connections that you make. And that can just be a conversation, like a really good conversation. That's something that you can't be deliberate about it. This is where you have to be genuine. Your genuine self is what you're putting out there. A big thing I see, a sort of big mistake I see, is people go online and do a lot of these sort of, they're really well thought out posts, but I think they can be really detrimental because people will tend to just laze over it. It's like inspirational posts, and I just think it looks really cheesy and fake, even if they're not trying to be. Like they're not being fake, but I'm afraid it comes across so wrong with people. And I think putting that out in the timeline is kind of risky, a bad move. I think you're better just putting thoughts out rather than a statement of, be awesome with one another, guys. I'm not saying that's not a bad thing to say, but instead of saying, like, be awesome to a person, I would just kind of have the discussion about being awesome to people.
I have 4 people that came to mind when you said that. And
I said that,
yeah,
you kind of look over and go, okay, cool.
okay, you know, but you know, you see the engagement on that post, and that post would get maybe 5 likes and retweets 0. And anyone watching this doesn't know, I break down Twitter in the Destiny economy. So retweets are ascendant shards, likes are legendary shards, the purple ones, comments are prisms, and that's a good way to break it down into the value of that and how much it helps us grow. Retweets are our bread and butter, and you know, so right. right? So if you copy and paste a quote that has existed since the dawn of time, the pro of that is you're showing your presence on Twitter. That's all that it's doing. It doesn't show anything about who you are. It doesn't show anything about what you're going to contribute to the community that's different than someone else in this incredibly oversaturated field. As you said, people are going to just glaze over it, so you're gambling anyway by being on social media, by being vulnerable. Why not just post a thought, right?
I don't want to like diminish people that want to put out some inspirational stuff for people to see, but when you're growing your presence and your brand especially, I think just having a proper commentary. If I was to go on, I would just talk the way I talk and know in myself that I'm an upstanding person, that my opinion on something is the right opinion.
You have a very strong sense of self, don't you?
Yeah, I'd like to think I do. So
yeah. You can really tell that as well. And you can tell that I think the difficulty a lot of creators run into, and I myself was guilty of this when I was getting started, because I had no idea what I was doing in the first 6 months. And I was like, oh, this is successful. This person's doing this. You neglect yourself. And I feel like the people that are brought down the worst, and the people that have the hardest time growing, are the people that are lacking a sense of self.
I see that a lot in the timeline as well, unfortunately. And as sad as it is, I think obviously we go through hard times, but I think sometimes sharing that you're having hard times can be tricky online as well. I think that
very tricky.
It can have a bad influence as well, because I think it builds up a really bad picture of who you are. Obviously, if you're going through any kind of rough times, like, I think that can really drain the energy that you want from that person on their timeline. It's like a sad sort of thought. I'm always looking out for my friends. I'll say, is everything okay? But at the same time, I wonder if you could maybe just put a more positive thing in the timeline, not to be fake either, but it's like that can be really detrimental if you're opening like a strong topic like that.
I think that the important part about when people share vulnerable parts of what they're struggling with is it contributing to your presence? Is it contributing to your branding? If you are constantly struggling and you're constantly not in a good headspace, but you're trying really hard to be a content creator and put your art out there and get a name for yourself. It is up and down. It's black and white, because you'll go up and then you'll go down and go up and go down. And if you're just vulnerable from the beginning and saying, hey, I'm struggling, I'm getting some help for myself, just wanted y'all to know I'm doing okay, but I'm struggling, that's it. That's where it ends, and it doesn't contaminate all the work that you've done.
It's part of your own sort of narrative online, and that's something else that I wanted to throw into the mix of the conversation as something that people might not think about. A lot of people make separate accounts and stuff for personal issues, which is something I've never tried, but it could be a sort of pointer to say, hey, like, make an account for that stuff if you want to get your real personal thoughts on the timeline. But if you want to have a brand, then have your own brand still.
Keep them separate.
The normal discussion going. I think that can really distort people's interest in talking to you as well. People want to help, but I think it can create a sort of sympathy vote as well, and that can be detrimental to your long-term growth.
Absolutely.
Well. So, like, for me, not once did I post any sort of personal issues, or I do talk about mental health a lot, but I wasn't really vocal about my own personal. I would just offer advice in the timeline, but put my own personal stuff up. I did deliberately make the choice not to vent that stuff online on Twitter. I was growing like my own brands and my content creation.
And you're happy with the side effect of that so far? Like, you wouldn't change that?
Personally, no, I wouldn't change that now. Like, I think, like, if I have any personal issues, I will always, like, I'm very in touch with myself, as you kind of observed. If I'm struggling, I'll be straight to the people that can help me get through that stuff. But I just don't think if I projected that on Twitter that it's effective, or as a content creator. They're using social media to grow their presence, as they start offloading so much that it creates a distorted image, and it takes people away from it being a content creator. It's very human, which is amazing. But I think that deviates from people when they're trying to build a brand, or not a product, but their presence as a content creator. Something
that's gotten me in hot water is I guess when I was getting started, I wasn't clear about what I was trying to do. And you figure that out as you're running along and as you're growing. But for me, content creating is a business. I'm running my life as a business. I have work, I have home. I think something that a lot of people run into as they're trying to grow is they rely on their audience to be their armchair psychologist. And I can understand the temptation. I understand someone's there right now and you need to talk to somebody. But the danger of that is you're contaminating that relationship, which is supposed to be a business relationship, into an out personal. I don't want to burden you with any baggage that you might not be able to handle. You know, it's not their problem. You know.
Honestly, you've absolutely nailed it with that kind of experience there. That's what I think that's probably what it is. It's having that professional side to it all. Obviously, you make really genuine connections, great like friends and whatnot, but at the same time, you can't always like pour yourself out to them because everyone's got their own complexities at the end of the day. And that was kind of rooted in my own attitudes online. Sorry, I didn't even think I would like conjure that up as a conversation.
I think that was amazing, an amazing segue. I think it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Let's talk about people pleasing, Pijinnn. What is people pleasing in your definition?
People pleasing is, to me, I actually had a conversation like an hour ago about this, but it's like doing what you think people want you to do and not doing what you actually want to do.
Mm-hmm. What are the consequences of that, you think?
It's just like putting on an act. It's like you wouldn't be able to keep it up and you would probably get stressed.
The example that came into my head when I was writing this question is you post something on Twitter and someone's like, I don't like that you did this. And then it's someone that's supported you for a while. One of my girlfriends had this happen to her. It was a supporter that was there for her forever. Mm-hmm. And then she posted a joke and they took it out of the context. And she's like, if you've known me for this long, how do you not think this is a joke? And then they blocked her. And then if she had a smaller sense of self, she might have groveled and been like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, you know, it's people pleasing is like, you know, understanding, I guess, where you begin and end, you know?
I know exactly what you mean now. Yep. It's like if you were to make a comment on something that you had an opinion about, someone disagreed with you, but to the point where they would up and out. Yeah, I've had that before. And at first, like, it hurt.
Yeah.
But and it was actually my mod team, part of my channel. They kind of helped coach me through it, but the bottom line was that I didn't owe the person anything to an extent, or the persons. It's like I'm still here to be myself and do what I can. So if you're people pleasing, it's not really the way to go. It's like you just kind of double down on yourself, and it's almost bad as lying, I'd say. Like, yeah,
well, I mean, and in a sense you are lying.
Like, you're lying to yourself most of all.
Yeah.
If you're trying to people please. So I'm definitely heavily against it. As much as I want to please everyone, I know that I'm not going to be for everyone, and all my thoughts and stuff aren't going to be for everyone. Anytime someone's disagreed with me, I'll try and keep it amicable. But if it's something as aggressive as them departing, blocking, then in a sense, you're probably better off without those.
Yeah, anyway. I think that's it's like a come to Jesus moment about content creating, where you're just like, yeah, that's actually part of the job, is understanding that if you understand your demographic and it's not a personal thing, then you're like, yeah, that person just really wasn't in my demographic, and that's totally okay. But it takes a while to understand that and understand that you literally have no control over other people. And that's fine.
Yeah. I've heard a few horror stories.
Oh, really?
People like having that an expectancy of the person by a certain point, just because they've watched them for so long. Or
it's so gross. I've seen that happen on Twitter, and it's like, oh, icky.
Yeah. So I don't know if that comes into people pleasing, but like when it's your audience or someone, like I'm going to like break it down, but like, creating content is you are the person putting out the thing for the other persons to enjoy, and for them to expect something in return is really unfair, because you're already providing that for them, and that's something that I pretty much got like drilled into me, because I used to try and I genuinely admit I definitely tried to people please. I would like have someone in my chats and whatnot say something, and then they would get timed out by a moderator or whatever, and they would say that, like, don't do that. And then I'd just sit there and wince, because I'm like, I don't want to lose them as a viewer.
Yeah.
And I was like, I did think like that. But eventually, like, with the right coaching, like people, again, this was a lot of my mod team, who like some of the best I've like could have asked for, gave me that advice. You can't always bend down to that. It makes the mods look silly and it makes your consistency look wrong. And that what they did wasn't right. And now I knew it wasn't right, but I tried to let it slide. But eventually, like if something goes down like that, opinions, disagreements, I'm not going to try and go, oh, it's fine. It's because it's you. I'll just go.
He's like, no,
Sorry,
dude,
like,
I'm sorry. Yeah, like
it
the
doesn't
rules
it
are
doesn't feel
here.
good.
I encountered that
Yeah.
recently in one of my streams where I had a moment of discomfort. That's as unclear as I'm gonna make it. I had a moment of discomfort, and after stream ended, I was on a call with my mods. I have five, I think I have 6 mods that have been my mods since I got started. Three of them have been with me since my first stream a year and a half ago. And so we've been like this forever. And I was on the phone with them and I was like, okay, so what's the plan of action? If this happens again, what should I do? Do I ban this person? All this stuff. And then I sat on it for the night. And then I realized that the next day, I wasn't clear in my rules. Didn't communicate that. And so as a streamer and a producer, as a streamer and a producer, it's my job to inform. And at the end of the day, I didn't set the groundwork for that behavior. So now I have a command that gives the rules immediately to the offending party, and that means that if they break the rules again, they can get banned. I just felt like I wasn't doing a good job of being authentic if I didn't provide that groundwork first. And the rules were there, but they just weren't very clear. So I had to revise my channel and that was a good thing that person crossed that boundary with me because I didn't know it was there to be crossed.
Exactly. That's amazing because I did have the exact same thing, and that was across Twitch and my Discord community. My rules were too vague at the time and didn't offer any kind of correction for people that were causing trouble or people that had like friction with. And the same went for the Twitch chat. So yeah, I agree. Like putting those systems in place is a good thing to do, and having all your mods up to speed on the etiquette for that situation and what you deem to be acceptable as well for your channel. And that way, yeah, you can evolve and you thrive after that because you get over that incident, and then if it ever happened again, you're able to deal with it effectively.
Being caught off guard is my biggest nightmare. I've actually had nightmares about it where something happens on stream and I'm like, what do I do?
What to do?
But all 14 people will be okay if I fuck something up. So we're going to close up with the final topic of the episode. And this is a hot topic for a lot of content creators. A lot of entertainers go through this. No, it doesn't matter what genre of the entertainment industry you're in. You will see that there's an entire industry on tabloids that it's a $1 billion industry called cancel culture. So, Pidge, what's your definition of cancel culture?
My definition of cancel culture is the sort of if there's a person who's very well known for any particular reason, be it for content creation, person of interest, cancel culture is what happens if there is some sort of thing happen. They do basically someone goes morally wrong or does something morally wrong, and it basically fills up the timeline. But be it from like individuals calling the person out, like, by the way, this person did this really bad thing, insert really bad thing, and then it goes kind of steamrolls from there. What happens is people who may have followed that person before end up changing their mind and then going against them, and that's a very vague description. There's so many caveats with it. But it's like,
well, it's funny because as you're saying it, I can see on your face that examples are coming to mind, but you can't say it because of privacy.
There's been a few, unfortunately, in the Destiny community.
Yeah.
I won't do names, obviously, but they were
I think I can count 7 that happened this year that have happened.
7?
Yeah, I've seen 5 recover. I think I've seen 5 recover, but 2 I would say are done.
Yeah. There was a few, unfortunately. With like serious reasons and allegations, and yeah, it leads to a sort of mass sort of we don't want you here anymore sort of movement.
Yeah.
And that's my definition of cancel culture. I think the only other thing to add to it is that it's the person is pretty much shut down without giving their half or their explanation against what's been said.
Yeah.
Or without a chance to kind of reprieve himself. It's just like, no, you're gone. That's it.
Yeah.
That's my full sort of understanding of it.
I started Game of Thrones for the first time 3 weeks ago, right, and finished it all in 2 weeks. Oh my God. And I was watching with my partner, and I said to him, and this isn't really a spoiler because the season's been out forever. Sean Bean, his character, Stark. Daddy Stark. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Daddy
Stark. I
Stark.
forgot his character's name as well.
Daddy Stark.
It's Ned Stark.
Ned Stark. So Ned Stark is about to no longer have a head. Yeah. And I was saying to my partner, and I was like, oh my God, this is the visual representation of cancel culture. And we went on a whole conversation about how it's very human to have cancel culture. It's very almost like it's one of our worst impulses is to rally around something because we need that sense of community and belonging so intensely that if we're all charging with pitchforks at someone that had done something wrong and we're so enraged and so lit up about this issue, we don't have the second to calm down to say, is this logical? There was one that happened last year in the D2 community, and I'm going to do my best to not do any privacy issues with it. But it was an allegation that came out to be false about a screenshot that happened, and this person's career, I believe they might have lost a sponsorship over it, but they were rewarded with it back, of my understanding. And because it came out as, you know what I'm talking about now? Yeah, and it came out as doctored. And they're still paying for that now a year later, just because someone, I think the excuse was this person was bored and they wanted to tear this person down. And it was just like, this person was just like, what, like I did nothing wrong, you know? And so that's how awful cancel culture can be. It's like in a second, it can just ruin your career without any explanation. Yeah, and so it's awful, but I think it was almost really humbling to see that in Game of Thrones, because it is inherently one of the worst qualities of being a human.
Yeah, you relate to that scene. You I think with the Game of Thrones reference, I think that makes you try to empathize with Sean Bean's character, who's the one who's getting cancelled in that sense.
He's literally getting cancelled.
He's literally getting cancelled, and I think you're on the opposite side of the fence here. You're sitting there knowing that he's not guilty in that sense, but you see that the other people who think it is, there's no change in their mind in that moment, and I think that's what makes. I do have strong feelings like against cancel culture. Yeah, I tend not to jump a bandwagon with people saying this person's that and this person's that. I do like to be logical, weigh up all the arguments. It's such a tricky thing, because you could end up saying or doing something that doesn't actually reflect what you think on the situation, and then you in turn can have people like come at you for weighing in on it and having that sort of opinion. So it's a tricky one. That one last year, because I know who
the big one about, last year.
There was the one that you're talking about in your reference. I remember seeing that, and I was just like,
"There's no way."
Like, no, there's like no way.
Yeah.
I genuinely, I didn't even weigh in on it. I was just like, this ridiculous. I actually didn't know what to do at the time to like say, hold your horses here. So it's very tricky for everyone involved, especially someone like myself who doesn't want to like
rock the boat.
Rock the boat, yeah. Like, I actually have experienced it at my own hands almost.
Oof.
And there was another incident, not even an incident, but it was something that happened in the gaming situation that was shared on the timeline, and I went to comment on it. I thought this person's done wrong by this. I says that wasn't very nice. I actually commented saying not a very nice move, and that day a lot of people got involved on it and started jumping on what I'd put on the timeline. And then I sort of vouched for myself that day. I says I'm not gonna do that, because first of all, the person was a lot younger than myself, and like I didn't want to cause a kind of you're cancelled straight off the bat. And again, my say on it wasn't the only thing, because the situation that happened, it already started spinning around on the timeline.
Mhm.
I'd weighed in
I
on it,
think I
though. I
know what
said,
you were talking about. I remember this.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it was a video clip
Yeah.
of a gamer and then a community manager.
Mhm.
You know the one.
Yep.
There you go. That makes it
Yep.
easier to kind of relate to, see
Yep.
where I'm going. I ended up commenting on that, and a lot of people in my timeline jumped on it as well, saying, "Oh, that wasn't right what you did." And at the end of the day, okay, it was a video game. It was just the kind of animosity that the person was generating, and I kind of myself realized that was borderline me trying to cancel someone, but not really, not deliberately, not going, "Oh, this person shouldn't do that." So it's really that kind of again set me in stone not to comment on stuff until I know the absolutes of it all, like the absolute facts and like situations that's been like issued. And it's all too easy, like the other one, to doctor stuff. And I don't want to discredit anybody that's came out with any kind of like major issues. I just know myself. I need to be careful how I portray myself and how I discuss it. I could weigh in it and then be there with the pitchforks, and then I could find out that again, like that situation, completely wrong to have thought. And then the other way is you're literally potentially ruining someone's like livelihood as well. Is that truly something you want?
You want that on your shoulders, right? I think what you just said was a really good, and it was a really great learning opportunity and experience that you shared, because you're a man of deep value and more morality. I'm gonna say, from my experience with knowing you as a person, you're just very grounded in what you respect and value in yourself and other people. And it can be like a moral like stab when you see someone causing harm to another person, and so naturally you'd want to say, hey, this is bullying, right? And then on the other side of it, I think what was so important is that you learned from that experience to gather all the facts before you doing that, because I'm almost envious that you experienced that, because by secondhand I can understand what you went through, but also like I'm a little bit grateful that I haven't gone through that personally. I've made some spicy tweets. I've made some tweets that have pissed off a few people that have sent the hounds after me. I realized from that experience that while there are different situations that called for different types of behavior from both you and I, you were doing it for something good, and I was just testing out the engagement farming tactics. Yeah. And those are such a tricky, slippery slope too, because it's like, do you really want to use this kind of tactic to generate this engagement, or are you a better person than that? And I didn't like having pitchforks after me. I was not proud of that. But you have to go through these things to understand, okay, this is a boundary on social media I will not cross. And I did it. And now, like what you experienced, you saw the facts later on and realized, like, okay, maybe I wouldn't have got myself involved in this had I known.
That's exactly it. Like, by all means, like, put some sort of, well, as you said, spicier thoughts on the timeline. But be prepared for the sort of adverse, like the ones you don't expect, especially.
Those ones can be like, whoa.
Yeah, and I think again that weighs in on my sort of narrative again for what I post in the timeline. I try not to put too many hot takes on. I am very opinionated. I sometimes just don't project it, and I think that's another key move for your presence online. If you want to go about like really like campaigning or any kind of, it doesn't have to just be content creation, but like campaigning things and whatnot, like that's great. Go for it. That's got its own caveats with how people are going to respond to that what's the word? Those sort of posts and threads and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I know myself that I'm like, I could tweet that right now and people would be like blah 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 all over it, but I just keep my thoughts to myself. I go, that's what I think of that. I'm happy with that. I'm settled with that. If it's something that's a hot topic in the community, I'll definitely weigh in, but I'll still weigh in and say, this is my thoughts, and that's that. Not saying that you can't change my mind. Obviously, I'm always open to a conversation, but I think getting too spicy can be one of those things in the timeline as well to watch out for.
I think one of the fundamental things that I've noticed that's different specifically that you bring to the table as a Destiny creator, I'm going to just label you right now as a D2 creator. That's not the category that you're forced to fall under. That's where I put you right now. I think one of the fundamental differences that I've noticed between you and a lot of other rising D2 creators is that you can have a functional conversation with someone that disagrees with you. You can see and respect their views and understand where they're coming from, even if you disagree with that viewpoint, because you have other evidence to have an alternate view in your mind, you know? And I really admire that, because you see so many people that you shouldn't even be on Twitter if you can't have a diplomatic conversation with someone about something you both disagree on, you know?
I've had a lot of that this week, and I'm sorry if this takes away from the sort of cancel culture.
No, it's fine.
I think as a segue to this, it's like keeping the conversation healthy no matter what. Is always important as well, and I've had a lot this week. It's actually almost drove me up the wall.
It's so tiring sometimes. You're babysitting.
Yeah, I almost like turned off like mentions and notifications from accounts that I don't follow back, because I had I had a really hot topic that I posted, and well, it was a hot topic. It was just a fun post, but it went bigger than I thought it was going to go, and it attracted a certain type of person, sort of elite groups of people who came in, and they were all knowing, all shining. And I'm just like, that's great, but like, I'm just like, have fun.
It's like the people that follow D1 Alphabet that don't know he's satire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I had a few brushes with folk this week that were pretty much telling me that what I had suggested was completely wrong by their standards.
But there's two ways to say something, and sorry to cut you off, but I felt like it was so important to be like, no, you can say something one way and completely obliterate someone else, or you can say something the other way and constructively correct and help enhance someone else's life.
Yeah. So I had quite a lot of DMs for that post as well, and the DMs were constructive things. People sent me constructive things, and I says, so like, just to like broaden it out a bit, I posted like a sort of meta thread of like things that I was going to do in game this weekend for the event it's on, and people came in and like sort of what's the word for it, scrutinized it in a very elitist way, and that was very draining for me. Like, for the first time in a while, I was really I didn't even expect it. It caught me off guard.
Yeah, that's what we talked about earlier, is getting caught off guard on stream. Is just something when you're not prepared for that, you're like, oh my god, what do I do? And because you can't just pause your stream like that right away.
Oh yeah. Luckily in the timeline you can. So I'd woke up quite early that morning. I was like, what? I was like, what are they talking about? And I went in and looked at the thread, and it was just a lot of toxic sort of chat. And I was just like,
no,
didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
And I did. I got it rattled my cage a little bit, because I sent out a few subsequent tweets, kind of just reinforcing my thoughts on certain ways to play the games and whatnot at the time. But yeah, that was just a segue reminded me of. I wanted to mention.
I think, but that's an umbrella under cancel culture, is negative, being a negative personality and not. I always say helping or hurting. When someone's talking, and it's like, are you helping or are you hurting? And if you're not one, you're the other. And just be aware of how your energy affects other people, and that can really come out in text.
Yeah, especially when you're discussing sort of cancel culture issues. Like, you need to be very sort of monotone and concise in what you're saying, and not be like as if you're being either patronizing or like you have a negative attitude towards it. You need to be clear cut.
Very clear and unbiased opinions as well when it comes to that stuff.
Especially if it's not something that's personal to you. I think being unbiased is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not saying that anyone that's like the cancel culture thing, it's so weird. I'm not going to mark that person as a bad person for life. It's like people can hopefully change and improve themselves from it. It's like, do you ever forgive a person that's been cancelled? Like, it opens up a whole open-ended conversation, like talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, you can have that initial rise in sort of anger with people.
Have you heard the metaphor about putting a nail in a fence? It's like a really old, so I was raised in Catholic school, so this is like an old biblical thing I remember, but it's like I think that the story is this father asks his son to whenever the son lies to his father, he says, okay, you're going to put a nail in this board of wood. And so then at the end of the week, he had 10 nails in the wood. And so then the father asked him to pull the nails out. And he's like, okay, so you've apologized. We've moved on. But as you can see, there's all these holes in the wood now. And I feel like that's things like cancel culture is so dangerous because the person that's being attacked has no control over the information being spread. So no matter what, that a lot of people's viewpoints would be altered of this person that's being attacked, and it's so dangerous in so many different ways.
I really don't know what the sort of right end game is for it all. Again, that's why I've tried not to weigh in on it too much. It's like someone in my timeline's been cancelled, I will like take in the full situation, and like it's so tricky, man. I'm trying.
I know.
I don't want to like say I know what's right and what's wrong. Like I'm like capable of mistakes and whatnot, and it's like, what do you say? What do you do?
I think that's the tricky part that I'm like, there's that paranoia you have, and as I'm trying to grow on YouTube, I'm like, yeah, someone can take a clip I have out of context and post it, and you know, if you have enough of an audience, you're like, okay, I'm safe, I'm fine. But like, there's gonna be people that now permanently see you in that light, and I'm like, you have no control over it at all.
Exactly. That's it. It's a very dangerous, even if it's for good or for worse.
Yeah.
Like, its own thing is like the animosity behind it, and like tearing someone down almost. Like,
some people just love being bullies.
That's it. At the end of the day, like if I make a mistake in life, like I'll go through that process of acknowledging the mistake, and obviously these are extremities, like the mistakes that these people have made and getting cancelled for. Like I'm not going to get cancelled for like forgetting to lock the door or something. I don't know. But that's still a mistake. And it's like that process.
Imagine your mom cancels you because you forgot to lock the bathroom door.
I forgot to lock the door last
God
night.
damn it.
You're in trouble. But you know what I mean? Like I'm sorry, I can't like give a satisfying like.
This is all great.
Point on it.
It's absolutely
like
fine.
It's completely open-ended.
I think that's the metaphor of cancel culture. Is the difficulties that of answering it so specifically is that it's an open-ended conversation. It really has no definitive issue of what it is. Yeah. It's just purposefully harming another person with lack of evidence, I think is like what I would say, you know?
Yeah, I hate he said, BS.
Get the emotions out of the issue.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, Pigeons, where can my audience members find you?
Yeah, well, I suppose as I was on to talk about Twitter, best place to start would be my Twitter, which is at PIGINN_. I do have an exotic way to spell in Pigeon. If you want to check out my live streams, it is twitch.tv/Pijinnn. Other than that, you'll catch me playing Destiny 2 all day long, probably.
Always a riot to play Destiny 2 with you, Pigeon. Pidge, thank you so much for spending this hour today hanging out on the podcast and on the new YouTube series. This episode is going to come out July 5th, so I'm really excited for it. And until then, my friend, we will touch base soon. So thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Catch you soon.